Okay, let's unpack this. We've got a monumental stack of source material today, and we are doing a deep dive into, well, the very architecture of market success.
We're talking about developing and executing winning marketing strategies. And not just the ideas, but the formal plans that actually underpin them.
Right. This isn't just theory. This is about how billion-dollar companies stay competitive or how they fail to.
That's absolutely right. I mean, this isn't a guide to setting up a social media campaign or, designing a logo. This deep dive is about the fundamental discipline and, maybe ironically, the necessary flexibility that you need to thrive today.
In this hyper-competitive economy that's driven by, well, really informed customers.
Exactly. They're connected, they have choices, and they're not afraid to use them.
And the big question we're trying to answer today, it really feels like the pivot point for every major corporation. How do these huge firms, I mean, across every single level of the organization, how do they successfully shift their focus?
Shift from what, though?
From that old industrial age idea of just making and selling stuff to actually designing and delivering superior customer value. And of course, doing it all while still making a robust profit.
It's a huge shift, and it requires strategic planning that has to start at the absolute highest corporate level, setting the mission, the vision, and it has to run all the way down to the individual product manager who's writing a tactical budget.
And if those levels aren't perfectly aligned, what happens?
The whole thing starts to wobble. You get internal friction, wasted resources, confused customers. It's a recipe for failure.
To illustrate why this continuous strategic process is, well, existential, we have a fantastic and maybe a little chilling case in point to start with. Yahoo.
Oh, yeah. Yahoo is the quintessential story. It's a company that had this massive early success, but it lacked the strategic clarity it needed to weather the big paradigm shifts.
They were founded in '94, right? Grew incredibly fast.
Incredibly fast. They became this massive force in internet media, and they proclaimed themselves the only place anyone needs to go to find anything, communicate with anyone, or buy anything. They wanted to be the hub for everything.
Everything. Search, email, news, games, shopping.
They were really trying to own the entire cognitive space of the early internet user. That was the goal.
But that very broad strategic scope, that became a massive vulnerability, didn't it?
Precisely. Their strategic challenges were immense because that broadness meant they were fighting on way too many fronts at the same time. They were constantly trying to fend off Google's rise.
Which was just laser focused on one thing.
Laser focused on search utility first. And because of that focus, Google became the darling of advertisers. They understood utility.
Meanwhile, Yahoo is dealing with this operational and strategic headache of integrating huge acquisitions. I'm thinking of companies like Flickr and Dell.ico.us.
And managing these massive international investments like their 46% stake in the Chinese e-commerce giant Alibaba. I mean, each one of those is a massive strategic decision that requires long-term alignment.
And you can't forget the whole Microsoft saga, the merger discussions that ended with that 10-year search deal in 2009.
That deal was a turning point. It essentially handed Microsoft the keys to Yahoo's own search engine for its project, Bing. The CEO at the time, Carol Bartz, she faced really serious questions about whether the company even knew what its core business was anymore.
And that whole scenario just illustrates exactly what we're talking about today. When you lose sight of your strategic mission, or when your competitive territory is just way too broad, you become incredibly vulnerable.
You do.
Yahoo's struggle just shows that this continuous creative planning and having the courage to fundamentally redefine what you are, it's not just important, it's existential, especially when you're facing a smart competitor that prioritizes focus.
Standing still just means you're falling behind. You have to not only know your core competencies, but constantly evaluate if they're even relevant anymore.
So our mission for you, the learner, is to really unpack this layered process. We're going to start with the foundations of customer value, move up through corporate goal setting, massive growth strategies like diversification.
And then we'll drill all the way down into the nuts and bolts of writing the formal, tactical marketing plan itself.
We want to pinpoint exactly where true, sustainable competitive advantage is built. And, it's usually built in the preparation, not just in the execution.
That's where the real work happens.
Okay, so let's start with that foundational shift in how successful companies approach marketing. We've got the traditional view, and then what we're calling the modern or smart competitor view.
The traditional view, which, let's be honest, still dominates a lot of organizations today, is just brutally simple.
Yeah.
The firm makes something and then it sells it.
That's it.
That's it. Marketing is seen as this sort of necessary evil that happens at the very end of the production cycle. It's all about promotion and sales force effort.
And that model, it makes sense in certain economies, right, where demand is just way higher than supply.
Exactly. Think about developing markets with goods shortages. If consumers aren't particularly quality sensitive or they just have very limited choices, you don't need sophisticated marketing.
You just need to get the product onto the shelf before your rival does.
That's the whole game.
Right.
But that is not the world most of us live in. We live in a world of, abundant choices, demanding customers, personalized preferences,
Which brings us to the modern smart competitor view.
which flips that entire model on its head. It places marketing at the very beginning of the planning process, not at the end. The company realizes its job isn't just to make a product. Its job is to be part of a value delivery process.
So designing and delivering offerings that are specifically tailored for well-defined target markets, it's a huge philosophical change.
It is. And what's really fascinating is that this value delivery process breaks down into a pretty distinct sequence of 3 phases. And it starts long before the product even gets out of R&D.
So what's phase 1?
Phase 1 is choosing the value. And this is the strategic homework that, frankly, most traditional firms either skip or they just rush through it.
This is where the heavy thinking happens.
This is the essence of strategic marketing: segmentation, targeting, and positioning,
Yeah.
or STP. Before you commit a single dollar to product development, you have to identify who are you going to serve. That's segmentation.
And then which of those segments are you going to prioritize?
That's targeting. And then the big one: why should they choose you over all the competition? That's your positioning. This is a massive commitment to focus.
So phase 1 is purely intellectual. It's figuring out your unique spot in the universe. Only after you have that clarity do you move to phase 2.
Which is providing the value. That's where the actual product design, the engineering, the manufacturing, all that kicks in. This is where you determine the specific product features, the pricing structure that reflects that value, and the distribution channels you're going to use.
The logistics of actually getting it to the customer.
And then finally, phase 3, communicating the value.
This is what everyone thinks marketing is.
This is it. This is utilizing all your communication tools, the sales force, the internet, advertising, PR, to announce, promote, and explain the offering. But the critical insight here, the one that's so often missed, is that every single phase has huge cost implications.
How so?
If you segment poorly in phase 1, you are going to waste a massive amount of money in phase 3, shouting your message at people who just don't care.
That makes perfect sense. So if you're trying to be efficient across those 3 phases, you have to look at every single internal activity. And to identify where you can create the most value and minimize costs, we have to turn to a classic management tool, Michael Porter's value chain.
Porter's model is just such a powerful analytical lens. It views the entire firm as this systematic synthesis of 9 strategically relevant activities. It helps managers see the real sources of cost and differentiation.
And he divides them into 5 primary activities and 4 support activities.
Exactly. The 5 primary activities for, say, a manufacturing firm, they trace the physical flow of the product itself.
Okay, so number 1 is?
1 is inbound logistics, so bringing raw materials into the business, receiving them, storing them. 2 is operations, which is converting those materials into the final product.
Manufacturing, packaging, all that.
Yep. 3 is outbound logistics, shipping the final product out. Warehousing, distribution. 4 is marketing and sales. And 5 is service, which supports the product after the sale, installation, repair, training.
And these core activities are all sustained by those 4 support activities.
That's right. Those are procurement, which is how the firm sources all its inputs. Technology development, so your R&D and process improvements. Human resource management, hiring, training, compensation. And finally, firm infrastructure.
Infrastructure is kind of a catch-all, isn't it?
It is, and it's often overlooked, but it's where general management, planning, finance, accounting, all those legal costs reside. It's the backbone.
So the manager's task here is immense. You have to examine every single one of those 9 activities, scrutinize the costs and the performance, and constantly ask, where can we be more efficient and where can we add value that a customer will actually pay for?
But the true insight in Porter's work, the real competitive advantage leverage point, is often not in optimizing the individual activity. It's in optimizing the linkages between them.
Oh, okay.
How seamlessly does the output of your operations team flow into your outbound logistics? How quickly does customer service feedback get circled back to your technology development team? Superior coordination creates value that your rivals just can't easily copy.
And you can't just look inward, right? You have to be benchmarking against competitor costs and performance.
Absolutely. You have to benchmark against your direct competitors, but you also have to take this best-of-class approach. You should be studying practices even across radically different industries. The sources cite GE benchmarking against P&G's innovation practices to improve its own R&D.
That makes sense.
The goal is just relentless improvement to deliver higher value at a lower cost than the competition at every single point in that chain.
The difficulty of optimizing those linkages, that leads us directly to the next level of strategic thinking. Because a company's success doesn't just rely on how well individual departments like finance or R&D do their own thing in isolation. It relies on coordination.
Hear the key word there. Silos are strategy killers. Real success relies on coordinating all these departmental activities to effectively execute core business processes. And this means you have to break down those traditional departmental boxes and build cross-functional teams that execute a process from end to end.
That's where we see these classic examples of organizational engineering. Xerox, for instance, created its customer operations group precisely to break down these barriers.
What did that group do?
It linked sales, shipping, installations, service, and billing to ensure a single, smooth, continuous customer experience, instead of what you usually get, which is this jarring handoff between internal departments.
And the sources highlight 5 distinct, non-departmental core business processes that require this kind of seamless coordination. Mastering these processes is the true engine of a successful, market-oriented organization.
Let's run through them. Process 1, the market sensing process.
Which is all about gathering, disseminating, and, most importantly, acting upon information about the market and the customer. Just constantly scanning the environment.
Process 2, the new offering realization process.
This is your whole product development sequence, researching, developing, and launching high-quality new products quickly, efficiently, and within budget.
Process 3, the customer acquisition process.
Defining your target markets and then designing the campaigns and incentives to prospect for and win new customers.
Process 4, which is a big one today, the customer relationship management, or CRM process.
Right, and this is all focused on retention and lifetime value. It means building a deeper understanding, strengthening relationships, and customizing your offerings for individual, highly profitable customers.
And finally, process 5, the fulfillment management process.
The execution of the promise.
Oh.
Receiving and approving orders, shipping the goods on time, and making sure you collect payment in a timely manner. I mean, if you look at a company like Amazon, their entire competitive advantage is built on ruthlessly optimizing their fulfillment management process.
But this emphasis on coordination and process optimization, it extends far beyond the company walls, doesn't it? Which leads us to the idea of the value delivery network.
Right. Competitive advantage is increasingly achieved not just through your own internal efficiency, but by building a superior network of partners. This network, which we often call the supply chain, is composed of key external players, your suppliers, your distributors, logistics providers, all collaborating seamlessly.
So it's not companies competing against companies anymore.
The old adage is true. Companies no longer compete. Marketing networks compete.
And we have a great example of a firm that was aggressively streamlining that external network. Sony. Back in May 2009, Sony announced this major strategic decision to cut its number of suppliers in half over the next 2 years, down to just 1,200.
On the surface, this sounds like just common sense, right? The move was intended to increase the volume of parts and materials purchased from the remaining suppliers. The strategic goal was totally unambiguous. Reduce unit costs and slash overall procurement spending through scale and, fewer relationship overheads.
But the analysis of this move is where the real insight is. It sounds like a guaranteed win, but did the analysts immediately agree?
No, not universally. Some analysts saw it as a positive, concrete commitment to restructuring. But others, like an analyst named Nobuo Kurahashi, noted that this was just operational streamlining and wouldn't simply push up earnings or bear fruit immediately.
And that's a crucial distinction for you, the listener.
It is. Operational efficiency is absolutely necessary for survival, but a true strategic breakthrough, something that changes the rules of the industry, is something else entirely. Sony was getting fitter, for sure, but they weren't necessarily getting strategically unique overnight. It takes time for those cuts to really impact the bottom line and deliver a true competitive advantage.
That process focus, it ultimately directs us to the fundamental question of identity, core competencies. the resources and capabilities that make a company truly unique. We noted that traditionally firms owned everything, but today, outsourcing is the norm.
Yeah, modern firms are constantly evaluating what they absolutely must own versus what they can afford to, rent or outsource. Manufacturing is a classic example.
Yeah.
It's often outsourced, particularly in textiles or electronics, because an offshore provider can execute that specific task with better quality or at a lower cost.
So strategic management is knowing which tasks you have to perform better than anyone else.
That's it in a nutshell.
So what defines a true core competency? How do we know which strengths are actually defensible assets?
We use three defining characteristics. First, it has to be a source of competitive advantage and make a significant contribution to perceived customer benefits. If your customers don't care about it, it's not a core competency.
Okay, that makes sense.
Second, it has to have applications in a wide variety of markets. It shouldn't be confined to just a single product line.
And third,
And this is arguably the most crucial point, it has to be difficult for competitors to imitate. If it can be easily copied by just investing some money or hiring a few engineers, it's not core, it's just a capability. The difficulty of imitation is what keeps the advantage defensible over the long term.
and we also heard about this concept of distinctive capabilities, which are broader excellence in processes, not just skills.
That's right. George Day argued that market-driven organizations particularly excel in three dynamic areas. First, market sensing, which is the ability to spot those weak signals from the periphery that hint at future trends.
Second is customer linking.
Right? Building powerful, deep relationships. And third is channel bonding, creating these synergistic partnerships with your distribution channels. It's all about systematic vigilance, constantly learning from the past, evaluating the present, and envisioning the future.
But sometimes, even the most vigilant organization with the best core competencies finds that the world has just shifted so dramatically that its whole system is no longer relevant. And that leads to the agony of business realignment.
Realignment is the moment when a company has to fundamentally reshape itself to fit its core strengths to a new reality. And it's painful because it involves dismantling old, successful structures. The process requires three really heavy steps.
Step one.
1. Redefining the business concept, the big idea of what the firm even stands for. 2. Reshaping the business scope, deciding which markets to exit and which to prioritize. And 3. Repositioning the company's brand identity.
And for a case study in painful existential realignment, we have to look at Kodak.
Kodak is the absolute poster child for this. In 2004, they were removed from the Dow Jones Industrial Average, a very clear, very public signal that the digital era had made their core business film completely obsolete.
And they had held a spot for over 70 years.
70 years. The company that literally invented the digital camera had to essentially abandon its decades-long film legacy just to survive.
The strategic choices they made during that transformation were just brutal. They had to expand their line of digital cameras and printers, but they also tried to leverage their deep competence in image science into the highly lucrative but completely different medical imaging business.
And the human cost was just immense. They eliminated almost 30,000 jobs between 2004 and 2007. But listen to this specific strategic detail from 2006. They outsourced the manufacturing of their digital cameras entirely.
Wait, a company built on manufacturing expertise decides to stop manufacturing its lid digital product.
Think about that. Why would they make such a counterintuitive decision?
I assume to focus their resources.
Exactly. They needed to focus their finite internal resources on what they considered their truly defensible core competence: image science, printing technology, and their retail presence, making it the most convenient and affordable way to process digital images. They realized they just couldn't compete with Sony, Canon, and HP on low-cost digital camera hardware manufacturing.
So they shifted their scope.
They courageously reshaped their business scope. That is the definition of strategy.
This intense focus on internal strengths and external relationships, it leads us to the final concept in this foundational section, the holistic marketing orientation.
Holistic marketing is the integrated view. It's the recognition that everything matters in marketing, and it aims to maximize long-term, mutually satisfying relationships with all of your key stakeholders.
So it's about building a superior value chain that delivers high product quality, service, and speed.
And recognizing that everyone is interconnected: internal departments, external partners, and of course your customers.
So if everything matters, how does a holistic marketer actually manage this complexity in a structured way? The sources tell us they address 3 interlocking management questions, all related to value.
Question 1 is value exploration. How do we identify new value opportunities that the market hasn't even realized yet? And this requires continuously scanning three interlocking spaces.
Okay, the first space is the customer cognitive space.
Understanding what the customer values, their desires, what problems they're struggling with, sometimes without even knowing it. The second is the company competence space, a really realistic assessment of what we are uniquely good at. And the third is the collaborator resource space.
Meaning what our partners can provide.
Exactly. What can our suppliers, distributors, and partners bring to the table? Exploration is all about finding that sweet spot where all three of those circles overlap.
And question 2 is value creation.
Once you've identified an opportunity, how do you efficiently create a new value offering? This means drawing benefits from the customer space, leveraging your core competencies, and managing your collaborative partners effectively to design and produce the new offering.
And finally, question 3 is value delivery.
This focuses purely on execution and infrastructure. How does the company use its internal systems and capabilities to deliver that new value offering efficiently? This requires real proficiency in customer relationship management, CRM, internal resource management, IRM, and business partnership management, BPM.
It sounds incredibly demanding.
It truly is an integrated, demanding system, which is exactly why it requires commitment from the CEO all the way down.
Okay, so if holistic marketing is the philosophy, then strategic planning is the implementation mechanism. It's the managerial process of developing and maintaining a viable fit between the organization's objectives, skills, resources, and those rapidly changing market opportunities.
It is the organization's comprehensive game plan for achieving its long-run objectives. And this planning, crucially, is layered across 4 distinct organizational levels, which ensures coherence from the top all the way to the bottom.
Level 1 is corporate planning, setting the mission for the entire enterprise. Level 2 is the division level, for large, diversified companies. Then level 3, the business unit level, focusing on specific markets. And finally, level 4 is the product level.
And that final product level is where the rubber meets the road. It's where the marketing plan sits. This document is the central instrument for directing and coordinating the marketing effort for a specific product line or brand.
And it has to link those high-level corporate goals down to concrete day-to-day actions.
It does, and we should clarify the distinction between the 2 types of marketing plans.
Right. First, you have the strategic marketing plan.
This is the big picture. It lays out your target markets and the firm's value proposition. Based on all that STP homework we talked about earlier, it answers the why and the who.
And then there's the tactical marketing plan.
That's the instruction manual. This specifies the exact measurable tactics, the product features, the promotional budget and methods, the pricing schedule, the sales channels you'll use, and the service parameters. This one answers the how and the when.
But before any of that tactical work can even happen, corporate headquarters has to undertake 4 essential activities to frame the entire planning cycle.
And it starts with the broadest definition of purpose. Activity 1, defining the corporate mission.
Activity 2, establishing strategic business units, SBUs.
Activity 3, assigning resources to each SBU.
And Activity 4, assessing growth opportunities. We really need to treat these 4 points as the absolute bedrock of a successful enterprise.
They're foundational.
Let's start at the absolute top, defining the corporate mission. A mission statement provides that shared sense of purpose and direction, but a good mission statement is actually a very disciplined piece of writing.
It is. Peter Drucker provided the classic questions a company has to constantly answer, like, what is our business? Who is the customer? And critically, what should our business be in the future?
The best statements, they reflect this ambitious, almost visionary aspiration that guides the organization for, the next decade or 2?
Absolutely. Think about the strategic leap that the former Sony president Akio Morita made when he articulated the need for personal portable sound. That vision led directly to the Walkman, an innovation that redefined an entire industry, not just a product line.
So if that's the vision, how do we make sure the mission statement itself is disciplined and useful, and not just a bunch of corporate platitudes? Our sources outline 5 characteristics of a good mission statement.
First, they have to focus on a limited number of goals. If a statement claims it's going to offer the highest quality, the widest distribution, and the lowest prices all at once, it just loses all credibility. Those goals often conflict.
Second, they must stress the company's major policies and values to make sure every employee acts consistently. This is really where culture meets strategy.
Third, they have to clearly define the major competitive spheres within which the company is going to operate.
Fourth, they need to take a long-term view. They're meant to be anchors, only changing when they cease to be relevant to the market. They're not daily headlines.
And fifth, they should be short, memorable, and meaningful. The consultant Guy Kawasaki advocated for these extremely short corporate mantras, like Mary Kay's Enriching Women's Lives, which immediately communicates both purpose and value.
Google is a great example of this distinction between a focused mission and a powerful philosophy. Their mission is concise: to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful.
But it's their philosophical principles, things like fast is better than slow, or you can make money without doing evil. Those are what truly define the operational boundaries of their behavior and their strategy.
That philosophy gives employees guidance even when the path forward is ambiguous. And defining those boundaries, the competitive spheres, is just critical for establishing your strategic territory. If you don't define your boundaries, you can't focus your resources.
And you can define your sphere in multiple dimensions. The most obvious is by industry. Think of Caterpillar choosing to focus primarily on the industrial earth-moving market, which distinguishes it from John Deere, which operates in both industrial and consumer sectors.
You can also define it by products and applications, like St. Jude Medical, which focuses exclusively on advanced medical technology. They won't diversify into consumer electronics no matter how attractive it looks.
Or by competence. NEC, for example, built its success by leveraging core competencies in computing, communications, and components, and that allowed it to apply those strengths consistently across diverse products like laptops and handheld telephones.
A different approach is defining by market segment, focusing on a specific customer group. Aston Martin only focuses on the high-performance sports car segment, or Gerber, which focuses primarily on the baby market. This is where that STP work we talked about earlier starts to dictate your corporate structure. The vertical sphere is particularly interesting because it defines the company's depth of involvement. This means how many channel levels, from raw material to final product, a company participates in.
And we see two very different but equally valid strategies here. On one hand, you have American Apparel, which has this huge vertical scope. They dye, design, sew, market, and distribute their entire clothing line from a single location in LA. They control everything.
And then you have the other extreme. The so-called hollow corporations like Metro International, they publish these free local newspapers globally.
Right. But they employ very few reporters, they own no printing presses, and they outsource nearly everything from articles to distribution. Their core competency is not production. It's coordination and brand management.
Finally, there's the geographical sphere, which defines the regions or countries where the company will operate, from highly local firms to multinationals like Deutsche Post DHL, which operates in over 100 countries. Strategic clarity requires drawing precise boundaries in all these dimensions.
After you've defined your mission and territory, the next strategic step is often adjusting the language you use to define the business itself, shifting from a narrow product-oriented definition to a much broader market-oriented definition.
And this shift is so crucial for long-term survival because products are transient, they come and go. But basic customer needs and specific customer groups, those endure.
Exactly. If Union Pacific defines its business as, we run a railroad, that's product-oriented, and it really limits their growth.
But if they define it as, we are a people and goods mover, that's market-oriented, and it unlocks massive growth opportunities in logistics, trucking, air freight.
It recognizes that the core need is transportation, not just rail tracks. Same for Xerox. If they only say, we make copying equipment, they completely miss the digital revolution. But if they say, we help improve office productivity, they can embrace new technologies and services easily.
Once that clarity is achieved, large corporations have to organize themselves efficiently into strategic business units, or SBUs. General Electric, famous for its vast diversification, once managed 49 distinct SBUs, each one requiring its own unique strategy.
An SBU isn't just a department. It has three specific characteristics that mean it has to be treated as a separate enterprise. First, it has to be a single business or a collection of related businesses that can be planned and managed independently.
Yes.
Second, it must have its own set of competitors. It doesn't compete solely with other GE units. And third, it must have a manager who is responsible for strategic planning and profit performance.
And the whole purpose of creating distinct SBUs is to develop these tailored strategies and assign appropriate funding based on their potential growth and competitive position.
Right. Senior management understands that their portfolio will inevitably include some businesses that are yesterday's cash cows and some that are tomorrow's breadwinners.
The News Corp portfolio during the 2008-2009 recession is a perfect illustration of why this management structure is so necessary. Their SBUs were affected drastically differently.
Broadcast TV was hit hard by the advertising slump. Cable networks were stable. The newspaper business slumped, which led to that painful decision to start charging web reader fees.
And their early digital bets were a mixed bag. MySpace faltered badly, while Hulu really hit its stride.
It's a portfolio where success in one area can offset a failure in another. And the overall strategic goal is synergy. If they developed a hit movie or TV show, the management directive was to leverage that success across all the other units. DVD sales, internet streaming, mobile products, theme parks.
After defining the SBUs, management moves to the third activity, assigning resources. This is the hard part, isn't it? Deciding which SBUs get the funding to grow and which ones are slated for divestment.
It is. And while classic tools like the Boston Consulting Group's growth share matrix helped, modern approaches rely more on shareholder value analysis.
And that analysis asks a simple but brutal question. Is the market value of the company greater with this specific SBU than it would be without it? If the SBU isn't contributing to long-term value, it's time to prune it.
Which leads us naturally to the fourth and final corporate activity, assessing growth opportunities. If we run the numbers and the desired future sales trajectory exceeds the projected sales from our current portfolio, we have what's called a strategic planning gap.
And that gap, that's the moment of truth for the CEO. It forces the company to actively plan for new businesses or, on the flip side, downsizings and terminations. Our sources illustrate this using the example of a hypothetical CD manufacturer, Musical. If their current trajectory only gets them halfway to their revenue goal, they have to actively find ways to fill that gap.
And to fill that gap, they have three main growth options, which we should explore in detail: intensive growth, integrative growth, and diversification growth.
All right, let's start with option one, intensive growth. This is the most conservative path. It's focused purely on maximizing the potential of your existing businesses within the current strategic scope. And we analyze this using the product market expansion grid.
This strategy basically asks, how much more can we squeeze out of our current assets? And it breaks down into three key tactics.
Tactic A, market penetration strategy.
This means you're trying to gain more market share with your current products in your current markets. For Musical, the CD manufacturer, this could be encouraging current customers to use their CDs for more than just music, maybe for data storage or home video backup.
Or it could just mean aggressively trying to attract your competitor's customer.
Exactly, by highlighting weaknesses in their products or their distribution.
Okay, Tactic B, market development strategy.
This is about finding entirely new markets for your current products. Musical might shift their focus from consumer entertainment to new user groups, maybe targeting office or factory markets for durable data solutions, or they could seek new distribution channels, like adding online-only sales or selling in completely new geographical regions, like entering the markets in Southeast Asia.
And Tactic C, product development strategy.
This involves developing new products or enhanced versions for your current markets. So Musical could add features like greater durability or offer the CD at 2 or more quality levels standard versus professional archive. They could also research an alternative technology like flash drives to keep their current customer base satisfied with a new medium.
And a fantastic, comprehensive, real-world example of aggressive intensive growth is ESPN.
Oh, absolutely. ESPN started in 1978 with just a single satellite dish broadcasting regional and frankly obscure sports. But their growth vision, which they articulated in the 90s, was relentless.
Oh, was it?
Wherever sports fans watched, read, or discussed sports, ESPN would be there.
And that vision was executed through pure intensive growth. They expanded into 10 cable channels, a massive website, a magazine, theme restaurants like ESPN Zone.
Radio affiliates, movies, merchandise, mobile services. By 2009, they were a $5 billion a year revenue generator for Disney. They relentlessly pursued every single aspect of their existing market segment. The sports fan with new offerings and new platforms, all related to the core product of sports broadcasting.
But even massive intensive growth might not be enough to fill that strategic planning gap, which leads us to option 2, integrative growth. This involves building or buying related businesses through backward, forward, or horizontal integration within the industry.
Integrative growth is all about controlling more of the value delivery network. For our CD maker Musical, acquiring a plastic supplier would be backward integration. Acquiring a chain of CD retail stores would be forward integration.
And acquiring a direct competitor would be horizontal integration.
Right, as long as antitrust regulations allow it.
We see this all the time in big pharma. Merck, for example, realized they needed more control over distribution and research. They went beyond just prescription meds through this complex web of joint ventures, with Johnson & Johnson for over-the-counter drugs and with Schering-Plough for new medicines.
And they engaged in forward integration by acquiring Medco, a huge pharmaceutical distributor.
The media industry is a master of leveraging synergies gained through this kind of integration. You take NBC Universal, if they launch a successful movie franchise like Fast and Furious, they instantly leverage it across their entire portfolio.
How so?
They'll air it on their cable channels like Bravo or USA. They'll develop a TV series with Universal Television. They'll stream it on Hulu, which they partially own, and they'll create amusement park attractions at Universal Studios. The integration ensures the success of one SBU feeds all the others.
And since very few companies can achieve this scale alone, this strategy demands the formation of strategic alliances, especially on a global scale.
Absolutely. Global victory increasingly goes to those who can build the better global network. The Star Alliance is the classic example, linking 21 massive global airlines, Lufthansa, United, Singapore Airlines, to allow travelers seamless, integrated global connections without any single airline having to own all the routes.
We see four major categories of marketing alliances that firms use to pool resources. First, product or service alliances, like the co-branded Alaska Airlines Bank of America Visa credit cards.
Second, promotional alliances, like McDonald's long-running partnership with Disney to offer co-branded products related to current films in their meals. It creates mutual demand.
Third, logistics alliances, where one company provides logistical services for another's product, freeing up the partner to focus on its core product. The Alternative Distribution Alliance, or ADA, formed by Warner Music and Sub Pop Records, is a prime example of this.
And fourth, pricing collaborations, where companies join forces for a special pricing initiative, which you often see in high-volume, low-margin industries like hotels or telecommunications.
The management of these external relationships has become so crucial that companies have institutionalized the ability to form and manage partnerships as a core organizational skill. It's known as Partner Relationship Management, or PRM.
Vodafone is a world leader in PRM. They embraced open-source software with their Betavine portal to tap into external creativity, encouraging developers globally to innovate on their platform.
This gave them early exposure to new trends and ensured compatibility with their network. And they leveraged their massive customer base, 289 million customers across 27 countries, to partner with companies like Dell to design laptops with built-in wireless broadband access. That's competitive advantage built through partnership.
Finally, we come to option 3, diversification growth. This is the highest risk, highest reward strategy. It's pursued when attractive opportunities exist completely outside the present businesses, and the company possesses the necessary strengths, maybe technological or managerial expertise, to succeed in unrelated markets.
The Walt Disney Company is the ultimate example here. They diversified wildly from their original core competency of animated films. Now they operate successfully in licensing, publishing, broadcast media with ABC and ESPN, theme parks, resorts, and cruises.
And there are very few linkages between running a cruise line and drawing a cartoon.
Except for the brand equity and the managerial talent.
The sources break down diversification into 3 flavors. First, the concentric strategy.
This is new products with technological or marketing synergies, but appealing to different customers. Musical might start a Laserdisc manufacturing operation because the technical processes of precision optical recording are similar to CD manufacturing, even though the market is slightly different, say, professional video storage.
Second, the horizontal strategy.
Unrelated new products that appeal to your current customers. So Musical might start producing compact disc cases. The product is unrelated technologically, but the current customers, the CD buyers, are the target market.
And third is the conglomerate strategy.
New businesses with absolutely no relationship to your current technology, products, or markets. Musical might decide to enter the application software market, betting that their strong management and financial discipline can translate success into a completely new arena.
And we can't forget the essential flip side of growth: downsizing and divesting older businesses. Strategy isn't just about adding new lines. It's about pruning. Companies have to carefully harvest or sell tired old businesses to free up resources and reduce costs.
American Express, for instance, spun off its financial advisors arm, which was renamed Ameriprise Financial, to focus on its core travel and credit card operations. Similarly, the tragic failure of KB Toys, which collapsed under big box competition and a failed eToys acquisition, illustrates the difficulty of changing course. It's a painful but necessary strategic decision to cut loose businesses that are acting as a drain on your resources.
We've talked about processes, products, and partners, but strategy implementation always happens within the context of the organization's structures and, critically, its corporate culture.
Culture is the shared experiences, stories, beliefs, and norms that characterize an organization. It's the invisible framework that dictates everything from the dress code to how employees greet customers and handle mistakes.
And while you can change structures and policies with a memo, culture is extremely difficult to change.
It is, yet it's often the single most important factor for successful strategy implementation, because culture provides the alignment or the misalignment. When Mark Hurd became CEO of HP, one of his major goals was to reinvigorate the HP way, a culture that expected teamwork, growth, and profits while also rewarding employees.
A strong, customer-centric culture can often stem directly from the leadership's personality.
Yeah, the case of Mike Lizaritis, the former co-CEO of BlackBerry's Research in Motion, is insightful here. He hosted a weekly innovation-centered vision series at HQ, focusing on new research, explicitly promoting a culture of innovation.
And that innovation culture is just non-negotiable for growth. Imagination is key, and ideas should be encouraged from groups that are often underrepresented employees with youthful or diverse perspectives, those who are geographically far from headquarters, or even industry newcomers.
Why them specifically?
Because they are less bound by the company's internal orthodoxy, they see things differently.
And this innovation has to be systematic. Jim Collins, the management guru, emphasized that true breakthrough success doesn't come from one single big bang innovation. It comes from decision upon decision, action upon action. He cites the decades-long systematic success of Disney and Walmart.
To identify where this systematic innovation can occur, we can look at the excellent framework of the Innovation Radar, which maps out 12 dimensions where a company can dramatically increase customer value across its business system.
Let's pull out a few examples. We can innovate through our offerings, which is the product itself. The Gillette MACH3 is the classic incremental product innovation.
Or you can innovate through the solutions you provide, focusing on a service bundle like UPS's logistics management services, which are far more complex and valuable than just simple package delivery.
You can innovate by redefining your customers. Enterprise Rent-A-Car didn't just target vacationers, they targeted the underserved market of replacement renters after car accidents, and they created an entirely new niche for themselves.
And innovation through value capture redefining how you get paid. Google's paid search model, where payment is tied directly to performance or clicks, fundamentally changed online advertising. Another example is Blockbuster's old revenue-sharing agreement with movie distributors, which shared both the risk and the reward.
Or even innovation through presence, where the offerings are bought or used. Starbucks selling music CDs in their coffee stores, or Redbox deploying their $1-a-day rental kiosks in front of supermarkets. These are strategic choices about location and access.
To find these breakthrough ideas, companies are using immersion techniques to force concentrated creativity. Samsung's Value Innovation Program, or VIP for instance, isolates cross-functional product development teams in a dedicated center with a specific timetable, forcing them to draw value curves that rank product attributes.
They intentionally force these tough trade-offs. Similarly, BMW mobilizes specialists from engineering, design, production, and marketing at its Research and Innovation Center, ensuring that new car development is integrated from the very start, rather than being passed sequentially from department to department.
Finally, strategic thinking requires looking forward and preparing for massive external shifts, which brings us to scenario analysis, pioneered by the Royal Dutch Shell Group.
This isn't fortune-telling, it's disciplined contingency planning. It involves developing plausible, detailed representations of possible futures based on market forces and uncertainties.
So what do managers do with these scenarios?
They adopt the scenario they think is most probable, but they constantly watch for confirmation or disconfirmation signals that suggest they should switch to a different plan.
The movie industry provides a perfect, ongoing, high-stakes example. The rise of Netflix and the ease of broadband content consumption, coupled with the emergence of those Redbox kiosks renting movies for just $1 a day, is fundamentally reshaping the economics.
DVD sales historically generated up to 70% of film profits, and that revenue stream has been rapidly collapsing. Studios know they need to shift distribution to cable or satellite video on demand, where they make about 70% on a typical $5 viewing, compared to about 30% on a DVD sale.
But they can't just flip a switch, can they? The DVD business is still paying the bills today.
Exactly. So they're running scenarios. Warner Bros. Experimented with releasing DVDs simultaneously with online and cable versions. Paramount debuted films for free online just to generate buzz. They are constantly testing and watching for signals to see which distribution model will eventually replace the physical disc business without destroying their revenue base in the process. That is scenario analysis in action.
We're moving now from the high-level corporate concerns down to the business unit strategic planning level. This process is more focused, and it starts with the SBU's specific mission, which has to align with the broader corporate purpose.
Right. The business mission must focus specifically on the SBU's competitive territory. You need precise language. For instance, a TV lighting company might define its mission as to target major television studios and become their vendor of choice for lighting technologies that represent the most advanced and reliable studio lighting arrangements. That clarity dictates your resource allocation.
And once that focus is set, the SBU undertakes the cornerstone of strategic analysis, the SWOT analysis, the overall evaluation of internal strengths and weaknesses and external opportunities and threats.
The external analysis is about tracking all those macro and micro environment forces. Companies have to identify both opportunities, areas of buyer need that can be profitably satisfied, and threats, which are unfavorable trends that could lead to lower sales or profit if you don't address them.
And opportunities don't just fall into your lap. They often come from a deep analysis of the customer journey, like using the consumption chain method, where you literally chart a customer's steps in acquiring, using, and disposing of a product. This often reveals totally new service gaps.
Some specific opportunities we see include capitalizing on converging industry trends, like integrating phones with GPS, making the buying process more convenient, like early internet book selling, meeting the persistent need for independent information like Angie's List, or introducing a new capability like Apple's iMovies on the iMac, or just pure speed like FedEx.
To evaluate these, companies use market opportunity analysis, or MOA, which forces management to ask some tough questions. Can we articulate the benefits convincingly? Can we reach the target market cost-effectively? Do we have the critical capabilities to deliver better than our competitors?
And ultimately, will the return on investment, the ROI, meet our financial threshold?
We can visualize this through matrices. The best opportunities are high in attractiveness and high in success probability. But the worst threats, those high in seriousness and high in probability, require immediate contingency planning and resource dedication, which often leads to painful choices.
This leads us to the internal side. Strengths and weaknesses. It's easy to spot attractive opportunities, but the core strategic challenge is knowing if you have the internal capabilities, the resources, skills, and processes to actually seize them successfully.
The Lone Bright example illustrates the brutal reality of weaknesses. They were an online mortgage company, and initially they were selling data leads to massive lenders like Wells Fargo and Bank of America.
A huge opportunity on the surface.
A huge opportunity, but their internal service demands became overwhelming and completely unsustainable. They realized the internal weakness was their lack of service capacity for these massive, complex institutional clients.
So their SWOT analysis forced them to realign. Instead of continuing to chase huge lenders, they shifted their target to individual loan officers, using simpler contracts and focusing their resources on developing superior customer service for that smaller, more manageable segment.
They deliberately limited themselves to opportunities for which they possessed the required internal strengths.
And once the SWOT is complete, the next step is goal formulation, developing specific, measurable objectives. This is done via management by objectives, or MBO, but there are 4 criteria that ensure these goals are useful, not just aspirational.
First, goals must be arranged hierarchically, focusing resources on the most important objectives first.
Second, they have to be quantitative whenever possible. You shift from increase ROI to 15% within 2 years. You have to have magnitude and time parameters.
Third, goals must be realistic. They have to be derived from the identified opportunities and strengths, not just wishful thinking.
And fourth, they have to be consistent. This is where most companies struggle because maximizing sales often conflicts directly with maximizing profit margins.
That classic consistency trade-off is often revealed in margin analysis. For years, Volkswagen, which was aiming for sales growth, might have had high revenue, but Porsche, aiming for margin maximization, had 7 times higher profit margins.
Although highly successful companies like Google, Microsoft, and Samsung, they strive relentlessly to maximize both profitability and growth simultaneously.
Once the goals are finalized, you move to strategy formulation, which is the game plan for achieving those goals. This is where we revisit Michael Porter's 3 generic strategies, which provide a great starting point for competitive positioning.
Strategy 1, overall cost leadership.
The firm aims for the lowest production and distribution costs, allowing them to undercut competitors, win massive market share, and maintain profits. Walmart is the classic example. The risk, of course, is that competitors will always try to drop their costs even lower, which can lead to destructive price wars.
Strategy 2, differentiation.
The business concentrates on achieving superior performance in one valued customer benefit area, like quality leadership, service excellence, or design superiority. This requires the best components, expert assembly, and effective communication of that premium quality. Apple uses this strategy very effectively.
And strategy 3, focus.
The firm concentrates on narrow, specific market segments, getting to know them intimately, and pursuing either cost leadership or differentiation within that segment. This is absolutely critical for smaller firms that just cannot compete across the board.
We see all three in the online travel industry. You have lowest fare, which is cost leadership, Travelocity, which is differentiation through comprehensive service, and last minute, which is focus, targeting niche travelers who have flexibility for very short notice travel.
But Porter's greatest insight here is the distinction between strategy and operational effectiveness. Operational effectiveness is just copying what works through benchmarking, which is essential, but it's easily copied.
Strategy, by contrast, is the creation of a unique and valuable position involving a different set of activities.
Yeah.
You have to either perform different activities from your rivals or perform similar activities in demonstrably different ways.
And as we've already established, global leadership today requires extensive reliance on strategic alliances. The ability to form and manage these complex partnerships is the defining core skill, that PRM we discussed earlier, which is why Vodafone's partnership with Dell to embed wireless broadband access in their laptops was such a massive, valuable strategic move.
The greatest strategic plan in the world is completely useless without effective program formulation and implementation. Strategy has to translate into detailed programs, and those programs have to be costed and justified.
And this is where management has to get granular, using tools like activity-based costing or ABC. ABC helps you determine whether a specific marketing program, say a trade show, a new advertising campaign, or a sales contest, is likely to produce sufficient results to justify the very real expenditure required. It justifies the budget.
But successful implementation isn't just about programs and costs, it's about the stakeholders. Businesses have to nurture all their stakeholders, customers, employees, suppliers, distributors, to earn sufficient profits for their stockholders. The relationship between internal and external satisfaction is key.
The sources describe this as creating a virtuous circle. High employee satisfaction leads to higher effort and dedication, which leads to higher quality products and services, which then creates higher customer satisfaction.
Which leads to more repeat business and profits, which finally leads to high stockholder satisfaction and more investment.
Yeah.
You break that circle anywhere, and the strategy fails.
To manage this complex organization, McKinsey's 7S's framework gives us a holistic view of the entire enterprise, dividing the organization into hardware and software.
The hardware consists of the visible, easier-to-change components: strategy, structure, and systems, the formal procedures.
And the software is much harder to change. It defines the organization's personality. Style, the common way of thinking and behaving. Skills, the needed competencies. Staff, hiring and training well. And shared values, the guiding ethics. When the software elements are robust and aligned with the hardware, implementation is far more likely to succeed.
But the reality is, the market environment changes way faster than those 7 S's, which leads inevitably to strategic fit erosion over time. This brings us to the necessity of feedback and control.
This brings us back to Peter Drucker's core insight, and it's one of the most important takeaways today. It is far more important to do the right thing, to be effective, than to do things right, to be efficient.
The best companies, of course, excel at both. But if you're efficiently producing the wrong product for the wrong market, you're still going to fail.
And the danger for large organizations that resist this shift is inertia. Change is incredibly difficult to execute unless it's driven by strong, visionary leadership before a crisis hits. We saw this with KB Toys. They failed to recapture their position after collapsing under competition and a failed acquisition. It is extremely difficult to generate the momentum needed to change course once your position is lost and your resources are depleted.
Now we arrive at the final, essential output of this entire layered process, the formal marketing plan document. This document operates at the product line or brand level and is the central instrument for directing and coordinating marketing effort on a day-to-day basis.
It's the structured document that summarizes the marketplace, articulates the strategic choices, and outlines exactly how objectives will be achieved. And it has to be tightly linked to every other department. Production needs to know the unit forecast, and finance needs to budget the required capital.
But let's pause on a common pain point here. Executives frequently cite specific shortcomings in these plans. The top complaints are often a lack of realism in the projections, insufficient competitive analysis, and an overly short-run focus that fails to align with the long-term corporate vision.
So a good plan, conversely, is simple, specific, realistic, and complete.
Exactly. The typical marketing plan is a living document ranging from 5 to 50 pages, and it contains 5 standard essential sections. Section 1, the executive summary and table of contents.
This is a brief, crystal-clear summary of the main goals and recommendations for senior management who might only read this one page. It needs to sell the strategy instantly.
Section 2, the situation analysis.
This contains all the relevant background data, historical sales, costs, key market segments, major competitors, and a survey of macro environment forces like technology, regulation, culture. This section culminates in the formal SWOT analysis that dictates the entire plan's direction.
Section 3, the marketing strategy.
This is where you summarize the most important decisions, defining the business mission at the product level, the precise financial objectives, and the competitive positioning, those STP decisions that define the value proposition.
Section 4, the financial projections. This is where the numbers have to prove the viability of the idea.
Correct. This includes the detailed sales forecast, often broken down by month and product line, the expense forecast, and the critical break-even analysis. The break-even analysis estimates exactly how many units you have to sell, at what price point, to offset your fixed and variable costs and start generating a profit. It defines the minimum required success threshold.
And the sources mention an advanced tool here that moves beyond simple hope: risk analysis.
Risk analysis is crucial for navigating uncertainty. Instead of relying on a single hopeful projection, managers get 3 estimates: optimistic, pessimistic, and most likely for each uncertain variable, like future raw material cost or market acceptance. You then simulate possible outcomes to compute a probability distribution of returns.
So it's essentially stress testing your plan against the worst possible economic scenario, so you aren't surprised when the market shifts unexpectedly.
And Section 5, the implementation controls.
This spells out the monthly or quarterly goals and budgets for management review, ensuring progress is tracked against the plan. It also includes the necessary contingency plans for when things inevitably go wrong. For instance, if a key competitor launches a new product, what is our predetermined defensive strategy?
Ultimately, the plan relies heavily on ongoing research to assess the current situation and track progress. And it affects relationships deeply. Not only the internal personnel who have to execute it, but external partners, suppliers, distributors, and stakeholders like regulators and the media, who all need to trust the company's direction.
To tie all these structured elements together, let's look at the sample marketing plan for Pegasus Sports International. It's a hypothetical startup manufacturer specializing in aftermarket inline skating accessories.
Their initial product offerings are highly specific. Blade boots, which is a wheel and frame cover so skaters can enter establishments without changing shoes. Skate sails, which are specifically designed for skating, and Skate Aid, a repair kit that's still under development. They're targeting a global market of about 31 million users.
Their market summary starts with really clear segmentation. They identify the primary growth markets as the fitness segment, growing at a 15% compound annual growth rate, and the recreational segment, growing at 10%. Combined, they project these 2 fastest-growing groups will reach 85% of the total market.
So that immediately defines their focus. They are not chasing the small, slow-growing competitive racing segments. They're targeting the masses.
Their SWOT analysis is extremely disciplined. Their strengths include deep industry experience and insight. They really emphasize that they are skaters for skaters. They have creative designers and an efficient direct-to-customer sales model, which allows for higher margins and direct feedback, much like Dell's successful original approach.
And their weaknesses are pretty typical for a capital-intensive startup. They're reliant on outside capital for production scale. They have a lack of retail presence for that crucial face-to-face awareness, and the inherent difficulty of developing brand awareness from scratch against established competitors.
The opportunities they identified are leveraging participation in a growing industry, decrease costs through economy of scale as they grow, and this strategic opportunity to leverage their competitors' marketing efforts to grow the general skating market.
So letting others pay the cost of bringing new people into the sport, while Pegasus just focuses on selling the accessories.
Precisely. And the threats. Potential competition from established manufacturers who might create their own accessories, an economic slump affecting discretionary spending on recreational products, and critically, safety concerns or studies questioning skating safety that could stop industry growth instantly.
And this SWOT analysis drives their key strategies and positioning. Their mission is focused. To provide the customer with the finest skating accessories available, we exist to attract and maintain customers.
Their targeting focuses specifically on those fastest-growing fitness and recreational groups that make up that 85% growth market. And their positioning is built around being the premier aftermarket skating accessory company, leveraging their unique competitive edge, that industry experience and passion.
Their distribution strategy shows measured growth. Initial direct-to-consumer sales via their website for high margins and direct relationships, followed by a plan to later add carefully selected retailers who can handle volume and brand promotion.
The financial section gives us the hard, quantifiable criteria for success, most notably the break-even analysis. Based on their average per-unit revenue and variable costs, Pegasus needs to generate $7,760 in monthly sales revenue, which equates to selling just 62 units a month.
So that is their minimum required operational effectiveness.
It is. Their financial objectives are ambitious but measurable, increasing the profit margin by 1% quarterly through efficiency gains and achieving double to triple-digit growth in the first 3 years.
And finally, the implementation controls ensure accountability. Progress is monitored via specific milestones like website completion or development of the retail channel, and by tracking monthly revenue and expenses against the forecasts. This structure ensures that the passion of the founders is channeled through actionable, measurable, strategic steps.
We have covered a huge range of ground today. We move from that philosophical shift toward value delivery, the essential strategic homework of segmentation, targeting, and the positioning down through the complex layers of organizational strategy, defining SBUs, and planning for massive growth via intensive, integrative, or diversification strategies.
And we landed squarely on the structured discipline of the marketing plan, which is the central instrument that translates that high-level corporate mission into concrete, tactical action at the product level.
I think the single most crucial takeaway for you, the learner, today is that strategic distinction we highlighted from Peter Drucker. True strategic success is not merely operational efficiency doing things right, which can be easily copied via benchmarking. It is organizational effectiveness, doing the right thing in the right market with the right competencies.
And effectiveness requires relentless self-analysis, hence the importance of the SWOT framework and the corporate courage to make painful choices. Whether that means completely realigning your core competencies and shedding a 70-year legacy, as Kodak was forced to do, or redefining your entire customer segment and business model, as Lone Bride successfully executed, strategy is defined by the choices you make not to pursue.
Strategic planning is never finished. The world just changes too fast. The market environment is constantly shifting, often accelerated by technology.
So we'll leave you with this final provocative question to consider. Given how rapidly technology shifts competitive landscapes, we saw Netflix and Redbox changing the movie industry, and Google reshaping search what core competency in your industry, which is currently considered absolutely essential to your business today, is most likely to become outsourced or rendered completely irrelevant in the next 5 years.
And what strategy should you develop now, starting with that STP homework, to prepare for that eventuality? That's the true challenge of strategic planning. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Until next time.